Okay. Charlie, come on down.
Jam-packed. I'll get it quick here.
Okay. Good news or bad news?
This is just news.
Okay, just news. Okay. Good stuff.
So I'm Charlie Pollard. I'm a closing attorney at MMH. Call me anytime if I can help you out. So it's tax assessment season. So the CAB just went out, and they're due, I believe, July 15th if you have an appeal. Fulton is supposed to come out the next week or so. So all those things are going out. What you need to remember is that when your clients call you and say, "What is this?" Well, first off, it's only 1 or 2 pages, so they could advise them to read it because it'll tell them everything they need to know. But you all know that we all get things. You just want to call a person that says, "What does this say?" Well, you can read it. But basically, they have 45 days to appeal. And if they do read it, it tells you how to do it. But if you want to have professional help, there are people, and Hap Richardson, who's here, is the person that I call when I get questions about it. So this season, you're going to get questions for it. Just know that those letters are going out now in the cabinet folder. So that's all I've got for today. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We will send out an email to everybody with Hap's information. He's an attorney in the office and specializes in this, so he can help anybody you have that has an issue. Thank you, Charlie. Have the screen back. Thank you. Supreme, come on down. Woo! Great class yesterday. All about credit. Who was in the room? You missed it. It was a great class.
It was, and we had a great turnout last week for the condo CE.
Yes. Who was in the condo class?
And we are putting that back on the schedule. I just confirmed September 16th for the condo training again. So yesterday's credit technologies credit CE was a hit. We're putting that back on the calendar, coming back soon. And we've got an appraisal CE credit that we're also putting on the calendar. So lots of good things. We appreciate the support. We had great turnout. I think yesterday we had 25, and at the condo class we had 35. So we really, really appreciate the opportunity to bring you the CE.
And the pizza.
Yeah, and the lunch.
Pizza like every day.
But we've also got Personal and Professional Best coming up tomorrow with Bob Goff, and I think we have a video clip.
Yes, we do.
And there will be Panera lunch at that as well.
Not pizza.
Thank you for feeding us.
If you want to put it on your calendars, it's tomorrow at 11:30, and we'll show you a little clip.
Today our program is focused on the most important area of all of our lives, relationships. Succeeding in relationships at home, in the workplace, with everybody, always is the foundation of our living our best life. It is the foundation of our writing our best life story. I'm sure that you'll all agree that it would be so much easier to succeed in relationship in life if everybody in our life would simply say what we want them to say, how we want them to say it, and do what we want them to do, how we want them to do it.
Yeah.
But of course, they don't, and they won't. And so, with our inspiration to become our best in relationships in life, we invited a very special guest to offer wisdom to all of us on the topic of becoming our best in relationships. He is a New York Times best-selling author, having written 3 books, Love Does, Everybody Always, and, well, I'll let him tell you about his 3rd book. Bob Goff, welcome to Personal and Professional Best.
Hey, thanks a million.
So if you were just to talk to the audience today and say, hey, the 1, 2, 3 things that you simply have to do, whether it's at home, with your spouse, significant other, children, or whether it's in the workplace, everywhere, what are those things that people have to do? What has to be involved to be their best in relationship?
Yeah, great question. I kind of made a list for myself, and your list might be longer than this, but it ain't going to be any shorter. It's love, purpose, connection, and a couple authentic relationships. And I'll start with this idea of love. Not like Hallmark love, printed on a card, but actually love in action, that you do these things. And word's going to get out. It's not a marketing thing, it's a being human thing. And to love the person right next to you and start with the people that creep you out, the ones that are a little difficult. And I know it's easy to be polite, particularly in the South. You guys know polite to be authentic. And that's another thing. That idea of just being like really who you are. You want to be the same on the surface that you are 30 feet down. And you can lead with authenticity. Instead of just talking about the score of the sports team, whoever it is that you follow, to talk about, some of the things that have been the most challenging this year for me are this in relationships, because what I aim for is authentic relationships, and I find myself talking about these things on the periphery. Does that happen to you? I'm telling you, now you're having an actual conversation.
So we got to see him speak at our Alfred office last month, and he is amazing. He's really motivational, really great guy. His message is awesome. So please come out tomorrow. It's going to be a good message, and win some charity money.
He's super West Coast. He's absolutely hilarious. So I don't want to take up much more time, but it's about 45 minutes to an hour tomorrow. We'll have Panera, and the guy is about to have this
And a chance to
hilarious.
Yeah, we will be playing trivia.
Yeah.
Charity.
So what they do is they show about a 20-minute
Yes. So it's
video
about-
between Pat and Bob. You take notes, and then they have a trivia contest between how many offices?
It's about 25 offices.
25
20
offices,
Keller Williams
and we've done it once, and we are moving up the rankings, so of course, you know me.
That's right.
We'll be number one, so we need a lot of people in the room to pay attention, have a nice lunch, and then get to the top of the leaderboard. So
You
we're
do it
looking
right
for
from your phone.
Yes, you do it from your phone. It's a lot of
It's fun,
fun.
and it's easy. It's easy.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So,
intense.
yeah.
Please come tomorrow. We would love to see everybody there and inspire everyone.
And if we have the instructions on how to download before they walk in the door, why don't we send that out today?
You all want to come at about 11:15, 11:20. Then you can grab your lunch, sit down, get comfortable, and get you all set.
Yeah,
It's super
perfect. It's really fun. Gets very competitive.
It does. Thank y'all.
Thanks, guys.
easy. Thank you.
Okay, upcoming classes. She chewing, I'll do. Okay, so upcoming classes, Magical Mornings has been renamed to Money Mornings. Kay Sellers, our new productivity coach, is hosting it. And we've got some changes coming to it. He's gotten some great turnout for the past couple of days, so we're very excited about Case coming in and being our head PC and heading up Money Mornings. Wednesday, a webinar put on by MAPS from 1 to 2 is a 90-day buyer challenge. You can look online for that. And then also from 3 to 4, there's a listing challenge, again, a webinar. Thursday, tomorrow, Supreme Professional Personal Best, 11:30 to 12:30. Be here about 11:15. Thursday, 1:30 to 3, Doug Graves was gracious enough to ask me if he could teach, and we put together a 3-part series. Tomorrow is the second in the series about how to do a winning negotiation for your clients. Next week finishes the series, and you'll actually be competing to write the best offer. So thank you so much to Doug Graves. Great turnout last week. Next Wednesday from 12 to 2 here in the training room for the top 20%, invitation only, Become a House of Influence with Michelle Hume. She's a mega agent from Peachtree City, and she has built a team of 17 in about 17 months. So she's going to come share how she's done that. Next Thursday, the workshop with Doug, Write the Offer Encounter with Doug. And then Monday the 1st, Ignite is back. If you know of anybody that is joining the Market Center, if you want to reboot your career, if you need CE hours, 33 hours of CE, you can do Ignite. It's a day class. Orientation is the 1st. It starts on the 8th.
Come see me if you want to register.
Right. Thursday the 11th, Bill is coming in from McManity doing contracts, purchase and sale, free CE. The new contract is, I believe, out. I got something from FMLS, so I'll be going over some of those changes. And then the 22nd is a 1031 exchange class, free CE. Who's teaching that?
That's going to be Whitney. So she was here. She's done it with us before.
Okay,
That's great.
Perfect. And then Thursday, the
two.
second part of contracts with the exhibits amendments with Bill Shoemaker from McManamy. Yes, Steph.
There's one that's not on there too, that's June 25th.
Mhm.
If we can back up for just a second, and that's 12:30 to 2. It's the second part of the due diligence series class for how to get through due diligence, and there will be a mold moisture expert there, as well as an HVAC technician to talk about when you're in due diligence, what to expect if you're representing buyer and so forth. So that's 12:30 to 2.
On the 25th, you don't have
Yes.
an overlap on that. That's 25th?
25th, I believe. Let me double check.
Okay, we'll check on that one.
You say that.
Dr.
Tomorrow, is it 1 to 3 or 1:30 to 3? Because the others were 1. I just want to make sure that people who are not here, because I think I told
I
them.
believe it's 1 to 3. 1 to 3, 2
Okay.
hours, yes. Okay, can I have the screen back? Thank you. All righty, so we're getting up to date here. We've got a lovely video for you to show you our May top producers. We might bring back in person so Erin and I can thoroughly embarrass each other. We'll see. We might bring Cara in. I don't know. We're gonna work on that. We're gonna change that up a little bit, and we'll be able to be sending you so you can use that in your marketing promotions. Alrighty. So,
I had a question in the back.
oh yes, questions about Kelly.
Is it okay if we talked, when we said at ALC meeting, like, what was it? We had the best written contract number, like, ever?
Yes, so in our ALC meeting Monday, we go over our stats, and we wrote contracts 577, the highest since June of 2016, 500. So,
In 1 month.
Yeah.
1 month, y'all.
That means you are working extremely hard. Thanks for the segue, Kelly.
Yeah.
Because Keller Williams Peachtree Road is committed to helping keep you in your 20%, which is getting out there, moving and shaking, getting the business. And we know the 80% is something that you all sit in and don't necessarily like because it takes the attention away from your 20%. So we are bringing you, we're bringing into the office a marketing team to help you do your marketing. The ALC was presented on Monday and they voted them into the Market Center. And I'm so excited to introduce you to Tiffany, what's your name, last name? I'll never remember that, Hollis. And our very own Dana Eisenberg, who has formed Epic Agents. Come on using. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, thanks. Thank you all for being here, and I want to say thank you to Dory and to the ALC for letting us present and be a part of your team here, because that's what we want to do is partner with you. Tiffany and I have been in residential real estate combined probably,
I've been doing this 20 years.
yeah, and myself 25. So love residential real estate, and we love being creative and helping you guys get to where you need to be. So we don't want you to drown in a sea of real estate agents. We want you to be epic. So what do top producers have that others don't? And we talk about this all the time, systems. So we have marketing systems ready-made for you, so you can leverage your time and use us for your marketing. Oops, sorry. So what we're doing is taking out the guesswork. So no more guesswork. We can provide you with great ideas. We can provide you with social media content. We can provide you with branding packages, anything from logos to flyers to whole branding packages. Sorry, I keep going too fast. Backwards, sorry. And there you go.
Okay, back there.
Good job. Where'd that go? Oh, there. No more guesswork. Okay. So what we are going to provide at the Market Center every month is a calendar, and this will be posted around the office, and it will also be emailed to you. But it's just a marketing plan for the whole month, give you different ideas throughout the month of what to post on social media and your blogs and things like that. Sorry. So again, ready to post content that'll be relevant for your social media. We'll offer how-to guides and videos to help you know how to do things. Of course, we're here. I'll be in the office, and you can always come to me and ask me. We can help you do what you need to do. Another thing that we're offering is a lot of us have to do it ourselves. And sometimes you get so busy, you don't have time to DIY. So what we will do is we'll do it for you.
We want to help you leverage your time, because you make more money when you're not spending all of your time doing administrative stuff. And marketing, falls into that. If you can focus your time on being out and growing your sphere and doing what you do best, we can really help you make sure that this is taken care of for you. It's an easy button. You don't have to worry about it anymore. And that means you make more money per hour by leveraging us. We've already done a whole lot of work for other agents. I've been in the Buckhead office for a while now, already working on stuff for them. And our team has our team has award-winning graphic designers. I'm one of them. I've won OB awards from the Greater Atlanta Homebuilders Association. We've done a lot of new home construction marketing. So if you do anything with new home construction, please reach out to us about that. We've also got other designers on staff. So I know there's a lot of you, and obviously Dana can do a lot in the office. But the benefit of working with us is that we have multiple designers, we have social media people, we have website people, and they're all working for us behind the scenes to make sure that you guys have the resources that you need to be successful. We are doing live Q&As. We'll do them probably via Facebook and webinars. We will also do some on-site training. So at the Buckhead office, we're currently doing like once a month marketing seminars, and we're seeing how that goes, and trying to cater our needs to what you guys are asking for. So Dana will work with you guys to make sure that in this office, she's hosting seminars and things that are based on what you guys are telling her that you need.
So again, I'll be in this office. Tiffany works in the Buckhead office. Come to me. I sit over where Kathy Woods used to sit in the cube. So I'm there. I'll have all of this information posted so that you can see it. But this is my number and my email address, so if you have questions, give me a call, text me, email me, drop by my office. I'm here to help and happy to help. Does anybody have any questions for us?
So we call this the easy button. So we know and we hear you when you say, oh my gosh, I have to do this, this, and this, but I'm really supposed to be doing lead generation and talking to my sphere. And so Aaron and I have been talking this for a while. I think even Robin was talking about this, and it just so happened that I was talking to Dana because her background is in marketing for mid-size new home construction. And Tiffany owned an ad agency for 20 years. And so when I started talking to Dana, she happened to be talking to Tiffany and said, oh, they're talking to me about Buckhead. And so we kind of put the wheels together. They've known each other for such a long time, and they have worked together so intimately on exactly this. This is how Epic Agents was created. So I hope, Tiffany, tell them how much business you've done since you've been in Buckhead, which is like 2.5 weeks.
I've sold probably about $10,000 worth of work, and I really haven't been pushing it heavily because, you know, we've been trying to get so many things going. That's just people who knocked on my door and, you know, yeah, so we're doing, we've really just promoted this calendar. I've been putting those out. That's pretty much the only way people know that I'm there is I put those all over the office. But I've got great cheerleaders over there. Everybody's really happy. We've got some samples of some work that we can leave. Please don't take it with you though, because we only have a handful that we're sharing that we have to show people right now. But please feel free to take a look at it and then return them. But we've already done some new home construction community work for Aggie agents over at the Buckhead office. And we're working on branding for several other of the top agents over there also. So it's very exciting.
We're so excited to bring this piece of the business to you so you can hit the easy button, talk to Dana, figure out what you need, whether it be a flyer, you want a whole branding package, or you need a logo worked on. We're bringing this to the Market Center for you to help you push the easy button, say, great, done, don't have to think about it, let me go out and lead generate, let me go out and meet people, whatever. Does it sound like a good idea? Is this exciting to you all?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay, great. Well, we're extremely excited about it. And so, you know, again, Dana's in this cubby section right over here on the left-hand side, and we will be sending out more information later on today. Thank you all.
Thank you guys so much.
You're good.
Okay.
You're good.
Just checking.
So I know the reason you're all here is so not to see me, and that is so okay. Steve has been here before talking about the Beltline. I think that might have been about a year ago. I know a lot has changed, and we speak every once in a while. I get his emails. I say, okay, time to bring Steve back to tell us what's new in the Beltway, what's happening, what are his thoughts about real estate. So without further ado, Steve, come on down.
Thank you. Hi.
Welcome.
How are
That
you?
advances that point.
You know, I'm actually going to just
You're
use
good.
the internet. I'm not going
Okay.
to really do a whole lot of
Okay,
fancy stuff.
you're good.
Did you happen to did they get a handout I emailed you? You probably didn't get it. I sent you a one-page a couple hours ago.
Oh,
But it's okay.
okay.
I've got a copy of it. We'll follow
Okay,
up.
well, we will send it out.
Okay, good. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you. My pleasure. This is fun. I love sharing my thoughts with people, my opinions. We all got opinions, right? So I put together a one-page outline. Dory had asked me to come and just kind of give an update and maybe share some thoughts with you guys about what's happening around Atlanta. For those of you that don't know, I started doing walking tours of the city in town 5 years ago. And I've done a lot of them, like 400 walking tours. I've walked all over the city. I did that with a group called Urban Explorers of Atlanta, which was a social club. And then more recently, I morphed into Explore ATL Tours, which is my tour company. So In the early years, I was hired by the Atlanta Beltline as a contractor to do their bus tour, which is, how many of you have done the Atlanta Beltline bus tour? Okay, I know we did one for the office, but they also do one for the public every Friday and Saturday. I actually did it for a couple of years. So I've learned a lot about the Beltline, the history of the Beltline, all the developments that are happening on the Beltline. So I have a pretty good feel for it. What I thought, I'm going to give you an update, a lot, kind of a pretty detailed update on what's happening around the Beltline, because it's a lot happening, but I'm going to do that a little bit later. I wanted to step back, and I thought, in the hour that I have with you, sort of what I could share with you that would be the most valuable for you, that maybe you could take and either get more excited, things that, I'm going to give you links, I'm going to show you where stuff is. One of the things I've done is I've tried to keep up with the developments that are happening around the city, which is, truly impossible. Nobody can keep up with it. But I try, and I have a pretty good handle of what's happening. So what I thought I'd do today is sort of prioritize what I think are the high impact developments and what I call sort of high impact trends, secular trends that are happening. So I've got good news and better news for you. Which do you want first? All right. So the good news is you guys are in the right place at the right time. You probably know that intuitively, but the right time may be a little different than you might think or have expected when you got into business. I think you are literally in a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to create wealth for yourself and your clients, but I think that once-in-a-lifetime opportunity is going to last longer than anybody in this room is going to live. I really believe we're talking about a multi-decade bull market for Atlanta real estate. Now, Atlanta's not the only city that's going to go through a lot of the trends and things that I'm going to talk about here, but it is definitely one of the sort of ground zeros for this kind of development. So I've got it broken down. It just so happens exactly a year ago, probably about the time I was here in this room, I published a piece called The Perfect Storm. And in that piece, which is on the internet here, I discussed what I called 10 drivers, the 10 drivers of demand. Here's the article right here. It was basically trying to explain why the real estate market in Atlanta was booming. And I kind of went through the 10 trends. I'm not going to go through them all, but what I'm here today really is to sort of give you an update on all of those trends. Are absolutely in force. They've picked up speed, if anything. But what I wanted to kind of give you today was sort of share with you how my thinking has evolved and make some observations that hopefully will be helpful to you as real estate professionals. But you can see the 10 drivers up there. And again, you can read the piece there. But to step back and sort of make some observations, I really feel, and this is from being out in the city a lot, not only on those tours, but being out, talking to people, talking to business people, talking to developers about what's happening in this city. Does anybody know the term strategic inflection point? Some of you, I know, some of you look old enough to remember, but back in one of the last booms, the so-called dot-com boom in the 90s, before the bubble burst for the dot-commers, a guy named Andy Grove, who was the CEO of Intel, and Intel, the chip maker, is one of the leading technology companies in the world. He hasn't been CEO for a long time, he's long since retired, but he wrote a book and introduced the term strategic inflection point. And what he meant by that, he was talking about businesses. And basically a strategic inflection point is a point at which a business either accelerates and goes into a whole new level and a whole new dimension, or if the management team makes the wrong decisions, ends up heading south. Okay? I believe that Atlanta, the city of Atlanta, is at a strategic inflection point. I'm going to talk about the risks to my great ideas here at the end. There are some risks that could derail this, there's no question about it. But I think the probability of this inflection point going like this for the city of Atlanta is about 99%. Okay, so what do I mean by at a strategic inflection point? I call this, I've been here, by the way, 35 years. I moved here in 1985. right out of college. I've been here ever since, so I've been sort of observing Atlanta in its many shapes and forms. And then as a tour guide, I've had the benefit of looking back, so I've learned about the history of Atlanta. So I know how the city started, why it started, and I've seen the evolution of the city over the years. And I know about all of the trials and tribulations of this city. But when I look at Atlanta today, the term I come up with is, if I had to sum it up, I would say that Atlanta's going from first class to world class. We've been a first class city all these years. The city would like to have everybody believed that it was this great global international city. It was not. It was not in the 1996. This was a thriving, booming business town. And I think what we're witnessing right now, what's happening literally as we speak, is this city is transitioning into a true world-class global city. And I see it because I'm meeting people from all over the world that are coming into the city to do business. I recently met the guy that runs Coca-Cola in Argentina. I've met people that work for Airbus Industries in Paris that are data analysts. People are coming to Atlanta. I'm kind of tuned into the whole visitor and convention business. You know, this city does a lot of convention business, but I think it's a lot more than most people think. There's 2 or 3 conventions a week coming into Atlanta. And these are people from all over the world that are coming in here. Very, very smart people, PhDs, research scientists, technology leaders that are coming into this city because of what's happening here. So I really think that's where we are. I think we're at that point. And if you see here, some of the reasons I think that we're really going to go world class here is if you look at the scale of development that's happening today, it is much different and much bigger than anything we've seen. Okay, how many of you spend time in Midtown? Okay, or even drive through, even if you don't live there, you play there, you eat there, you're familiar with what's happening. If you look at what's happening in Midtown, if you look at the development that's happening in Midtown, and there's a great curbed piece. Let's see if this is it here. I'll send you all these links if you want. No, that's another one that's really recent news. More recent news. They've got huge ads on the top. Here is the piece. This came out about within the last year, I'd say, November of 2018. This was a curved article that mapped, in this case, 34. But if you look at the developments, this is 34 developments that were coming out of the ground just in Midtown. But if you drive through Midtown, and if you go into Midtown and you look at the developments, the scale of these developments is much bigger and much greater than anything we've seen. And the architecture has changed quite a bit. You've seen the NCR building, it's right there on Spring Street. That is new. I mean, if you compare that to buildings that were built in the 70s and 80s and even in the 90s in Atlanta, they were kind of austere and frankly pretty boring architecturally. What's happening today is they're bringing in the world-class architects to design these buildings and world-class developers to build them. So you're seeing a skyline emerge now between Midtown and downtown that wasn't there 10 years ago. Okay, Midtown is absolutely ground zero for development in the city. All right, so that's one of the things. It's the scale of development that I think is quite different today than it has been in the past. Institutional investment, and it's not just. Thank you for getting those out. There's the outline for you, and I'll send Dory an email later with links to a lot of this stuff. If nothing else, I will save you a ton of time from having to scour the internet to find all this stuff. I just want to listen to me. Let me just give you the concepts here, and then you guys can look at the stuff that I'm going to send later. But just kind of get into the thought flow with me, if you would. The institutional investments that are coming into the city are amazing. I'm not in the commercial business, but I talk to people and I read the news and I see things like Croc Street Market. Do you know who developed Croc Street Market? Yes. It was a local developer named Pace's Properties. And Pace's Properties out of Atlanta sort of took that old warehouse, the old stove works, and converted it into truly a world-class so-called food hall, right? They built it up, they leased it up, they got it thriving, and guess what they did about a year ago? They sold it. Does anybody know who bought it? I'll give you a hint. It was not an Atlanta-based company.
It was a domestic company, but not Atlanta-based company. I thought this was interesting. It was a Charlotte-based real estate investment company. That, big company that buys properties like that for their portfolio. Okay. The other good example that I can get you, and we really don't even know who owns the big buildings going in Midtown. Those are all funded by big pension funds, big insurance companies, huge banks. These are the hedge funds that are going in there. In fact, even a lot of the residential stuff that's happening in Atlanta is hedge fund stuff, particularly on the stuff out on the west side. But the other example that I can give you that I think is really transformational is South Downtown. If you haven't heard about South Downtown, just do a search. It's a neighborhood called South Downtown. It's everything basically south of the 5 Points MARTA station down to about Mitchell Street. And then it runs, that's north and south. And then east and west, it runs from Centennial Park Boulevard, the old Ted Turner Boulevard, which is basically where the stadium and the Gulch starts, all the way to the Georgia Capitol. Okay, so we're talking about a 5 or 6 square block area. Who knows what's happening or what's been happening in South Downtown? Andrew?
Yeah, is that where Newport?
This is Newport RE-USA. Newport is a German company. And if you don't know it, this is what's fascinating. I think downtown is the sleeping giant that's about ready to wake up after being asleep for about 50 or 60 years and roar and go, I'm ready for business. Okay? So Newport, starting about 10 years ago, went in and quietly started acquiring buildings in the south, in this 5 or 6 square block area. Okay? They're up to about 50 buildings they're buying. And by the way, if you've ever seen this area, they're basically 2 to 4 story buildings. It was the old apparel area of Atlanta where people would go to buy their hats and buy their dresses. They had the hat store and the dress store and the Friedman shoes and the McCrory's 5 and dime stores. These are these old buildings. They're structurally sound for the most part. Newport, if you look at the renderings of what they're proposing for South Downtown, it is to literally bring that area alive. They're going to create a district down there called the South Downtown District that's going to have residential, it's going to have commercial, and it's going to have a lot of business, and it's going to have lofts. And these buildings are gorgeous, right? They're in there slowly. If you go down on the backside of the MARTA station right now on Forsyth Street, there's some really beautiful buildings that are being renovated right now. They're in there quietly gutting it. But the size of this, for a German company to come into Atlanta and go in and start buying up buildings and now be up to 50 buildings, that's significant. This is an institutional investor, obviously from abroad, that sees the opportunity here, right? And right next to it, you have the Gulch. I'll get to that in a little bit more, so I'm going to talk about develops in a little more kind of a coherent way. Corporate decisions. All right, there have been, I came out of the financial industry. I spent a lot of time watching Wall Street, and there's an old saying in the stock market that if you watch the smart money, it will tell you everything you need to know. The smart money are the guys that go in and buy before everybody else. They're the early adopters, so to speak, but with institutional money. All right, so I'm just going to give you a couple of data points that I think are very significant. And when I think of this, I'm talking about corporate boards in boardrooms making decisions that in effect are ensuring what we're talking about here, giving Atlanta its stamp of approval. All right? Anybody know who McKinsey & Company is? Just what do you know about McKinsey & Company? It's basically, if not the preeminent consulting company in the world. We're talking, this is one of the big four. This is a massive consulting company that when Coke has a problem, or Georgia Power has a problem, or Delta has a problem, they call McKinsey in to solve the problem. These are consulting firms that do everything from data analytics to, technology advising. They do strategy, but for huge, huge companies. Global company, absolutely one of the preeminent and smart. You've got some of the smartest people in the world working at McKinsey is the bottom line, right? And some of the highest paid people in the world. Okay, it's almost like Bain, where Romney came out of Bain & Company. It's on that level. All right, so let's just read the headline here. This is a couple weeks old. After 40 years, McKinsey & Company is leaving downtown to put its regional office and hundreds of jobs in a $200 million project on the Atlanta Beltline's East Side Trail, formerly known as the Murder Kroger. Right? Who would have thought? If you've been in Atlanta long enough like me and you drove around that, if you ever went in that parking lot, A, you know why they call it the Murder Kroger, and B, you'd be shocked right now that McKinsey & Company decided to move their headquarters from the regional there. All right, so my point is they have leased, I think, 2 floors in this building. The building is just coming online as we speak. The Kroger, if it didn't open this week, it's going to open in the next week or 2. The Kroger, by the way, if you don't know, it's kind of fascinating. I know some developers that explained this to me. The guys that led the development on Ponce City Market, Jim Irwin and those guys, bought the building and did this development called 755 Ponce, right? To convince Kroger to sell this piece of property to them, they had to guarantee that Kroger was going to be able to come back in and have a presence. Not only a presence, but an equity stake in the property. So what they did, this is interesting, I didn't even know this was possible. They actually created a condominium in the first floor that was sold back to Kroger as part of the deal. So Kroger owns the condominium in this building, and above it is this 8-story office building, which is arguably one of the most valuable pieces of property in the city of Atlanta right now. Okay, the fact that McKinsey has committed, that board of directors sat there in a room and said, we are going to sign the lease and move our entire regional headquarters to this building, is huge, folks. Do not underestimate it. I mean, aside from the fact that this is what they call a blue chip company moving into this building, it tells you everything you know about Jim Irwin and the guys that are developing the business. But here's where my mind goes. They're going to have, and by the way, if you read the article, it says, oh, we wanted it because of the cool factor. I mean, literally, this is going to be a competitive edge for them to recruit talent. The fact that you can work in this building, see the cool office space can be an advantage in recruiting battles. I mean, this is real, right? So they've made this decision. Here's where my mind goes. There's going to be a boardroom. You know they are going to have a boardroom and a meeting room that overlooks the East Side Trail. You guys know where this building is, right? Yes. Yeah. They rerouted the East Side Trail to literally go in the building. I don't know if you know that. They tore up the old East Side Trail and rerouted it to go by. So this building basically has the Atlanta Beltline East Side Trail in its lobby, right? So these guys, what do you think they're going to do? Think they're going to do any entertaining up there for clients, and they're going to be bringing in clients? Again, if you go back and look at their client list, you're talking about the who's who of the corporate world, the highest earning people on the planet, at least in the United States, coming in from all over the world, and they're going to take them right up to those offices, and those people are going to sit there and they're going to have a little rooftop patio out there, and they're all going to sit there and have their cocktails, and for the first time, these people with unlimited amounts of money are going to be looking down the East Side Trail and go, holy smokes, I want some of that. And there's more demand for you. My point in telling you, this is what I mean by this city is going to world-class level. The people, the nature of development, the nature of people that are coming in here, it's going to feel a lot more like New York City and Chicago and Boston. If you've ever spent some time in those cities, they feel like world-class cities. You feel the international presence, you feel the academic culture, the intellectual power of those cities. That is where we're at that strategic inflection point. It's happening right now. I'm going to talk more about demographics when I get to population, but I will just net it out by saying the way I think of Atlanta is it's not getting older, it's not getting younger, it's getting older and younger. Okay? And what's really interesting is the fastest growing segment is the people that are my age. Well, I'm not quite over 65, but the 65 and above are going to triple in number by 2040, according to the Atlanta Regional Commission. Okay? And I've got some suggestions, or at least some things to think about for you in your business that relate to that. It's always been a transportation and logistics hub, but this airport is one of the greatest assets the city of Atlanta has. And because of the transportation infrastructure, I'm talking about trains, I'm talking about freight trains, I'm talking about airline, I'm talking about the shipping coming in from Savannah, and the position of Atlanta, where it is as a jumping off point to Europe and South America. This city, that's why a lot of companies are choosing Atlanta. Atlanta. Strategically, it is important. And people, the kind of people we've been talking about for the last 5-10 minutes, travel globally all the time. And to be able to get to that airport in 20 minutes from just about anywhere and fly nonstop to Manchester, England, or Buenos Aires, Argentina, or get to anywhere nonstop is huge. That is huge. So that's another reason that's already been here. And then the technology hub with Georgia Tech over there and the whole technology square that's over on the east side of 75 now. If you've seen what's happening, the buildings that are going in along that west Peachtree corridor between Spring Street and West Peachtree are some of the largest developments in the city of Atlanta. And those guys are going to attract more of these kind of companies and this brain power that I'm talking about. Money is flowing into the city. Capital is flowing in. So you've heard people say, oh, Atlanta is relatively inexpensive. Well, it is. The price of a condo in Midtown is a half of what it is in Boston, literally 50%, and probably a third of what the same property is in New York City. So it is still relatively inexpensive. All right, let me get to what I think is the big deal and what Atlanta calls the big number. The city calls it the big number. I urge you to spend some time on this next topic and get your brain around it so you can talk fluently about it and share this with clients. There's sort of the obvious stuff. I'm going to share with you the numbers, the data with you, but then there's the not so obvious stuff that I think is what you really need to focus on and think about. Just be thinking about this for the next few weeks and months as I plant this seed for you. Okay? In, let's see, when was it? 2015, 2016, City of Atlanta hired a new planning commissioner. I think I mentioned this the last time I was here. Tim Keene was his name. He was fresh from Charleston, South Carolina. He got a big uptick on his job. He became the city planning commissioner for the city of Atlanta under Christine Reed. And when he got here, this guy's a planner. He's a strategic planning kind of guy. That's the way his brain works. And when he got to Atlanta, he looked around and he made this, what we call the blinding flash of the obvious observation, which is that this city suffers from a lack of planning. So he said, the first thing we need to do is put together a strategic plan for the city of Atlanta. And so he hired, this is when I knew the guy was smarter than he looked. And he looks funny, he's got a goofy hairline, he's he's a total hipster, and he goes around the city on scooters and bikes and stuff like that. He's pretty cool guy. But anyway, when he hired his first hire, he hired an outside consultant to help him with this project of putting together a strategic plan. Anybody know who that consultant was? It's the guy that came up with the idea for the Atlanta Beltline, Ryan Gravel. He hired Ryan Gravel as a consultant, as a contract consultant to the city, and together they put together something called Atlanta City Design, which is the strategic plan for the city of Atlanta. They published it last year, and the first thing they did, which is, again, smart, he said, if we're going to develop a strategic plan, a 20 to 30 year strategic plan, we need to know how many people we're going to be planning for. So they hired a guy named Dr. Arthur Nelson. And if you don't do anything else after this presentation, watch Dr. Nelson's video. It is called, How Big Can Atlanta Get? It's on YouTube. It's the only place you'll find it. By the grace of God, somebody in that room recorded this man's presentation. It's an hour and 10 minutes long, so you're going to need a cup, maybe a bottle of wine, maybe a 6-pack. It's not the most exciting presentation in the world, and Dr. Nelson, he's a college professor, he's a demographer. He is not the most exciting person in the world. But if you suffer through it, I promise you, you will walk away a changed person. You're going to have so much energy and so much passion for your business. Basically what he does, here's the net. He was hired, and in that presentation, they unveiled what they call the big number. The big number is 1.3 million. 1.3 million. Okay? That is what he thinks or projects the population of Atlanta, city of Atlanta, to be by 2050. Okay? In case you don't know, the current population of the city of Atlanta is just under 500,000. Okay? The metro area is at around 6.5 million. He's saying, so current 500,000, metro 6.5. He is saying that by 2050, City of Atlanta, city limits, will have 1.3 million, and the metro area will be 9 million. So it's not ITP versus OTP, folks. It's ITP and OTP and OOTP, which is the exurbs that's going to come into play, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. He basically used a National Association of Realtors study and some data that you'll hear why when you listen to the presentation, but he says that this is very reliable data, and basically what he's saying is that in a metro area like this, in a big metropolitan city like Atlanta, if they were given the option, in other words, if the housing was available, that 15% of the metro region's population would choose to live in the city. Okay? And one of the points he makes, which really explains why this market is booming, is, now he also points out, don't forget that means that 85% do not want to live in the city. That's good news for you guys that specialize in Dunwoody and Brookhaven and all parts out of here, right? So, but here's the thing, this is the punchline, this is the nuance of this man's presentation. He said if 15% could, they would live in Atlanta right now, okay? Well, 15% of 6.5 million is about 900,000. But there's only 500,000 people living in Atlanta. He refers to that as unmet demand. In other words, the housing isn't there. I'm getting goosebumps, because guys, if you understand even the first thing out of the economics professor's mouth, which is supply and demand, that really bodes well for pricing, right? So if we've got unmet demand now of 400,000 people, that explains why there's so much pressure on pricing, especially in these in-town neighborhoods, right? Well, fast forward, he's saying that we are going to go to 9 million metro, and 15% of that is 1.3 million. Now, whether we can build enough housing to house 1.3 million in Atlanta or not, it remains to be seen. But obviously, so the word that comes to mind here, and this is probably of all the things I'm going to share with you today, I think it's probably the most impactful and the least understood by the average person out there. What are we talking about here? With that many more people moving into the city, what's the word that comes to mind? It starts with a D.
Density.
Okay. One thing about Atlanta, if you look at the numbers of Atlanta density compared to other big cities, even cities that are comparable size, the density, people live, how many people per square mile within the city is relatively low. I'd say medium. I think we're in the process of going from a medium density city to a high density city in the next 20 or 30 years, okay? The density has to come. It's not an option. The density, and most people, when they hear the word density, they kind of cringe because it doesn't have a real positive connotation, right? You think of being crowded and cramped and more traffic and, longer waits to get into restaurants and all this stuff that creates, frankly, stress and frustration and tension. I posted something on my Facebook page the other day about have you noticed that the amount of honking in Atlanta has increased in the last year or so? Yeah, why is that? It's probably people being distracted on their phones, but it's really frustration, right? It's that frustration that's rising. It's that anger level that's rising, that people are tired of waiting. They're tired of people in front of them looking at their phone and reading instead of going when the light turns green. It's all those things. But guys, you ain't even seen anything yet. Think about another 900,000 people living in the city of Atlanta. Just stop for a second and try to envision this city with another 900,000 people. Just think about it. Do the math. I'm going to talk about transit. We ain't getting any traffic release anytime soon. The soonest we're going to see any transit improvement is maybe some bus rapid transit in 5 to 7 years. No light rail for at least 10 to 15 years. This is going to get a lot worse before it gets better. In fact, it's not going to get better. The traffic is not going to get any better. I hate to break it to you. So don't tell your clients that the transit's coming in. It's not going to get any better. What you got to tell people is you have to be someone who is wired for density, which kind of leads me to some things that these are just my own observations, some of them really my own opinions, but I think this is why it's number one. I think the urban density, even the suburban density is increasing, but the urban density is going to change profoundly. And folks, don't take my word for it, just go drive around Midtown and downtown. It is literally happening as we speak. It is happening right before our eyes. But what I mean in my parentheses here is this has huge implications, and I really do believe it's one of the most least understood or least appreciated things. And the reason I say that is, having been in Atlanta 35 years, I've kind of gotten spoiled with this low density city that we have. One of the things people love about Atlanta, I hear it all the time, it's a big city, but it doesn't feel like a big city. It kind of feels like a city of neighborhoods, or, it doesn't feel like that New York. I hate to break it to you, but it's going to feel like New York 20 years from now. When you go to New York City or Boston, any of those big cities, you leave there, you get on the airplane, and you can kind of feel the stress coming out of your fingertips. It's because you're on all the time. It's true. I travel to New York a lot, and you're on. Even people that live in New York say that. They come down here, they can feel it's like they decelerate, right? So my point here, the implications of this is, now listen to this, because I'm bullish on Atlanta. I believe there is a whole bunch of folks that are going to say, I'm out of here. The older folks probably will start the trend. I know you're seeing a lot of empty nesters that are flowing in. That's still happening. I don't know where that is in the life cycle. There's no doubt about it. But that's because there's 76 million baby boomers, which is my generation, right? When the kids are out of school, they're going to come down. But at some point, people are going to get tired of getting run over on the Atlanta Beltline. And they're going to go, you know what? I love it, but maybe I'll come down once a month instead of buying a townhouse in Old Fourth Ward. I really think what's going to happen is there is going to be it's almost like a boomerang effect. I think you're going to start seeing people head out of the city. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I just know from observing, and I study human behavior a lot in my former career, there's a whole lot of people that are not wired to be able to handle this density. And they're living here now. I mean, even people that live in Ansley Park or Inman Park or Grant Park or Old Fourth Ward, they moved there when it was cool. They wanted to be near Ponce City Market. But I tell you what, after about 3 or 4 years of Ponce City Market and the East Side Trail, you're probably ready to move to Woodstock or maybe even further out. You know what I'm saying? You still may want to have access. You want to be able to drive to Atlanta in an hour, but you're willing to go back to having some land. I'm telling you, I have this feeling that we're going to be, and what's going to happen is those people are going to move out, but for everyone that moves out, there's 3 more, probably millennials, that are going to move into the city. And those are the folks that are wired for density. And so my point is, for better or for worse, this city, you are not going to recognize it either in the look or feel 10 to 15 years from now. And for some people, that's going to be really bad news because they're going to miss the old Atlanta. But for all the new folks that are coming in, the next generation that is going to take this thing and run with it, it's a whole different city. So just be aware of that. All right, the implications for you clearly are that supply and demand kicks in here. You have already got, you know, from Nelson's data there, we've already got a huge imbalance, right? If there's unmet demand of 400,000 now, that unmet demand is going to keep up. So the developers are going to keep coming in and building that multifamily. But what's the one thing you really can't build anymore of? Single family home. So right here is the best investment you could probably ever make in any form, shape, or fashion. And I'm probably talking about stocks, gold, single family homes, and the closer you are to a transit line, the better. So let's see, where am I at? Okay, we're about 12:30. Let me go in, and so let me just finish these real quick. I'm not going to go through them. So supply and demand imbalance will grow. The demand, we know, it's going to have to be met with multifamily. And remember I talked about the scale of how the scale of development in Atlanta has been changing over the last few years. Go down and look at the new apartment buildings that are built in, when I first moved, my first foray in town went from Dunwoody to Midtown. And I moved into Mayfair, which was an apartment building at the time. Even back there, the Mayfair Tower on 14th Street, even at its time, it was a beautiful building. It was just the one tower initially, and then they became condos. I actually bought the unit that I was in. That building was about, I want to say 30 stories, but it was pretty tall for Atlanta. But if you look at what's going up now, they're going up 40 and 50 stories, and the density of the units are much smaller. The density, even within the buildings, is increasing dramatically. That's what's different here. So they're going to meet this demand by building multifamily, right? The single family, as I say, that's the place where you're going to get the highest ROI, especially, and I'll talk more about where to go in a minute. Atlanta will remain relatively affordable because every place is going up in value. I don't know where all these people are coming from, but the same thing is happening in every major city in the United States. Denver's going through this. Seattle's going through this. There was a study today. There was a new study released today about job growth. And Atlanta is not even on the radar. Like the real job engines are Seattle, Denver, San Francisco, where the big tech firms are, the Amazons and all the big tech firms around Silicon Valley. But this is happening in a lot of big cities. So that's why I say those cities are going to keep going up in value, so Atlanta will remain. No traffic relief in sight. I will tell you more about that in a minute. Access to MARTA, when I say will become much more valuable, I cannot overemphasize that enough. Being near MARTA right now sounds like a good idea. You're like, intuitively that makes sense. 10 years from now, you will be fighting to be near MARTA station within walking distance. I promise you, the places where you're going to get the biggest price appreciation are in some of those neighborhoods, and I'll tell you which ones they are now. I'll tell you the MARTA stations are the ones in those outlying MARTA lines, not on the north side of town, unfortunately, but if you go south, east, and west from the city, along the MARTA lines, there are some MARTA stations kind of in the second orbit. I'm talking about off Beltline, like what I call beyond the Beltline, which is more than half a mile. And that's my next point here. So the best opportunities are what I call beyond the Beltline, which is more than half a mile outside of the Beltline loop. If you remember from my old presentation, the Beltline set up a planning area, which is half a mile on either side of the corridor, right? That's what they call the Beltline planning area, and that's where all the action is. I mean, even on the west side, it's too late, and I'll talk about that. I mean, the prices have tripled in the last 2 to 3 years in Westview and West End. Yep. I mean, you can go chase that if you want, but that's like buying a stock that's doubled or tripled. I mean, and by the way, I'll wait till I get to the risk part, but there is something called reversion to the mean. Anybody studying statistics? There's a really nasty reality called reversion to the mean that is like a natural law, right? And I'll tell you what that is in a minute. That's one of the risks that we face. There's going to be a growing need to get away. I promise you this. Just like in New York, if you know New Yorkers, they go to the coast, or they go to the Hamptons, or they go to the mountains, or they go somewhere for the weekend to get away. It's an hour, 2-hour drive. They go to Airbnbs up on the Hudson. Maybe if they're rich enough, they've got a place over in Connecticut, and they go to it, or in the Hamptons, or somewhere out on Long Island. That's what's going to happen here. So one of the things this is not new. This has been, people have been predicting that the Georgia mountains, and I'm sure properties up in Helen and other places like that. But I think what may be underestimated here is the number of people that are going to want to buy a weekend home in some of these places. And I think you watch that. Maybe you're already hearing it from some of your clients, but they're going to need that. We're going to need places to regenerate and renew ourselves. I think there's going to be a huge demand for bedroom communities, and I'm talking about places like Cartersville, Gainesville, Woodstock. Even further out. I think this is going to happen. Places that people can get to. They're not going to work down here. We are having a lot more people working remotely, so people can live further out. You can still get to Atlanta if you want to get that excitement on the weekends, but you live in a bedroom community. This is very typical in the Northeast. And the growing demand for complete communities, if you haven't heard that term, look it up. It is kind of these, some people call it new urbanism. It's these really cute planned communities, much smaller houses, single-family houses in really cool areas, maybe a community center in the middle, something, not a tiny house development, but a sort of medium-sized house development. Something like Seaside, Florida, but 20, 30 minutes outside the city of Atlanta. Look up complete communities. It's a relatively new term. I think co-housing is another big trend that you can keep an eye on. It's already starting in Atlanta. All right, so let me use the remaining time I have to give you the sort of the actual hard updates on stuff. So tons of stuff happening on the Atlanta Beltline. Remember what I said when I was here last time. The actual name of the Atlanta Beltline is the Atlanta Beltline Redevelopment Plan. This was approved by the city for one reason and one reason only in 2005. And do not kid yourself. Don't let anybody kid you. The only reason that Shirley Franklin and the city council said yes to a 30-year, $5 billion infrastructure project is because they wanted to breathe life back into those neighborhoods that had been decimated for 30, 40, 50 years. And I'm talking about all the neighborhoods, not just West End and Westview. I'm talking about all the way around the 22-mile loop, even places like Inman Park, which was, in the 70s, and they called that the sort of the project or the hood. Okay, so that's what it is. It is a redevelopment plan, and it is working. It is working really, really well. And the East Side Trail is the best proof we have of that. So here's what's happening on the East Side Trail. The latest thing that is either happening this week or next week is the final extension of the East Side Trail. You probably know that at the end of last year, they extended the East Side Trail from Irwin Street, which is where Krog Street Market is, down through Reynoldstown and down through that corridor by Stein Steel all the way down to Kirkwood Avenue in Reynoldstown. Okay. Then about 6 months ago, they opened another section here. Oh, I'm sorry, they did not open yet. They finished it about 6 months ago. They poured the concrete between Kirkwood and almost to Memorial Drive. That's the last piece of the East Side Trail. Okay, they are about ready to open it. It may have opened this week, but I haven't heard any ribbon cuttings. It'll probably be a big announcement. What they're waiting on is some construction on the corner of Bill Kennedy Way and Memorial Drive. Let me show you guys what I'm talking about here. Okay, so this is a map that I created. It shows the blue line is the MARTA system. This is the Atlanta Beltline corridor. So there's your red and gold line, your blue and green line. What I am talking about here is right here. See where the hand is right there? Right here, this is Memorial Drive. This is where the Beltline, the piece that I'm talking about, they had to create a ramp here because they're going to put a speed table here, just like they did on Krog Street. If you know where Krog Street and DeKalb Avenue is, they're putting a scramble, a pedestrian scramble, so that the traffic will stop in all four directions. And what's interesting here is because of the alignment of the trail, they're going to have to do a diagonal crossing across Memorial, which is, if you think going across Krog Street diagonally was tough, or DeKalb, wait till you try doing Memorial. Yeah, it is something else. Okay, so the one I'm talking about here, this is the pedestrian scramble right here. This is DeKalb and Krog Street. Okay, the next one that's going to be real interesting to see because of, again, the density that's occurring there is right here. Let me zoom in one more time so you can see what's happening here. It's this intersection right here. So you can't really see it on this map, but you see this big property piece right. This is called Madison Yards. This is the Fuqua development that's huge. We're talking one of the largest Publix in the southeastern United States, I think, is opening this week. That's going to be right here. So this entire corner is a massive, very typical suburban mall. I mean, the size of this mall right here. That's what's going in on the corner of Bill Kennedy Way and Memorial Drive. So the Beltline comes down, and it's on the west side of Bill Kennedy Way right here. So Fuqua, rather than wait for the Atlanta Beltline to build the trail, has already built the Beltline. He poured the concrete on the west side of Bill Kennedy Way, which is along his property, so that he wouldn't have to wait. So what they're doing is they're creating a diagonal cross right there at Memorial Drive. Right, this is big. This is going to open the next couple of days. The reason this is big is because it's going to allow people to essentially go from Piedmont Park down to Memorial Drive. So that brings the East Side Trail up to about 4 miles in length. Okay, that's the latest on the East Side Trail. Oh, the other thing I heard on the East Side Trail is they finally are going to put the lighting on the East Side Trail. Apparently that's going to start like also any day now. In the next couple of weeks, I think they're going to start construction, which is going to be a real disruption for the East Side Trail. Because they're going to have to run electric to get those lamps. The lamps are every 70 feet. They'll probably put security cameras in. They're the low sort of LED lighting that they activate when you walk by them at night. That's badly needed on the East Side Trail. Here's where we're talking about here. Here's the public. Here's that intersection I'm talking about. So that diagonal cuts right across here. And this is where Fuqua has built that. All right, so the next section is the South Side Trail, which is just south of there. As you probably know, when you cross I-20, which is right there, you go into what neighborhood? Glenwood Park. That's this area right here. There's the Glenwood Park pond. There's the other Fuqua development, which is literally a quarter of a mile away. That's where the Crowbar and the Kroger are. And so he's built a Kroger and a Publix like a quarter of a mile from each other. By the way, all of the back of this property, see all this right in here? That's all multifamily. That's about a 5-story apartment complex. So those people are going to literally be living on I-20.
Nice.
There's another example of what I mean by things you never would have seen. Nobody would have put up with an apartment overlooking I-20 10, 20 years ago in Atlanta. Or I-75 over on Spring Street on West Peachtree, right? Guess what? They're all over it. They snatch them up so fast, they don't care if it's over I-20. And when I think about a city like that, you ever go to San Francisco and you drive from the airport into downtown in San Francisco and you go up that freeway that curves around like that, and there's all these kind of old apartments just right on the hill, on the top of the cliff, literally overlooking the freeway. You think, oh my God, who would live in that? But people, that's because there's no more land. And San Francisco is an example of the kind of density that we're going to. So people will now gladly live overlooking I-20. That's the kind of thing that's changing in Atlanta. All right, so you go through Glenwood Park here. This is kind of exciting because they're saying right here at the corner of, this is Maynard Jackson High School on the left. So this is Glenwood Avenue. So this is the South Side Trail. Nobody really knows what's going to happen on Bill Kennedy Way because Bill Kennedy Way is already a very active street. That was the corridor, but Bill Kennedy Way was built many years ago on top of the tracks. So the Beltline doesn't have anything to work with on Bill Kennedy Way. So the Fuqua built the trail along his property, but when you get to I-20, we don't know. We think the trail is going to continue along here. The problem is there's street parking for the Glenwood people, and I don't think they're going to want to give up their street parking, but that's the only place to put. So that's yet to be determined. And the transit, for sure, well, I mean, if there is going to be transit, is going to go right down the middle of Bill Kennedy Way. It'll be one of those in-street things like downtown. All right, so let me get to the South Side Trail because this is kind of exciting. So the South Side Trail starts at Glenwood. It's a 4-mile stretch that the Beltline purchased a couple years ago, and it's about ready to open. Like they say June, who knows? They've been saying they pushed it back. It's already 6 months past due, so I don't know if it's June or July or August. But sometime in the next month or two, we're going to have this stretch open from Glenwood Park, right here, Glenwood Avenue. This is the South Side Trail. It goes all the way over here to University. It basically ends right here at the end of University Avenue. And right here is the West Side Trail that was opened a couple years ago. Okay, so let me tell you what's new along here. There are a couple of, you can see it on my outline there, a couple of huge developments that are important because most of this is undeveloped land. There's very few, the density of housing is very low down there. There's huge tracts of industrial land that were, abandoned 30, 40, 50 years ago and torn down. You see a lot of these huge slabs of concrete and asphalt, big pieces of property, dozens of acres, right? Which, by the way, is why the Atlanta Beltline said that of the entire 22-mile loop, the area of the Beltline that had the greatest potential for economic development was this area right here. It's called the Boulevard Crossing corner of the Beltline. It's basically 5 to 6 o'clock on the clock, right? So a couple things. Pollock Shores is building an apartment complex right here on Boulevard. It's right here. Significant. It's a couple hundred units. It's not the biggest thing in the world, but what's significant, it is literally the first new development on the South Side Trail. And I think it's going to be a catalyst for more development. You probably know that down over here on Grant Park, a little bit further down, probably right in here, I can't remember, I don't know where Hill Street is, but right in here is something called the Beacon, which went online about 1.5 years ago. A really nice kind of a Prague Street market on steroids. Beautiful. It's been slow to ramp up because it's at the end of Grant Street. There's kind of no way in, no way out. It does have a Hill Street entrance, which is going to have access to the Beltline, but it's basically just the Grant Park folks that are patronizing that. So, and then the other big development is over here in Pittsburgh, right in here on the other side of I-75 when you cross. By the way, the South Side Trail goes under I-75 here, so there'll be a really cool tunnel when they eventually build it. And you'll be able to walk through it here in the next couple of weeks. But right in here is a big 30-acre piece of property called Pittsburgh Yards. That's the Annie Casey Foundation property, which is huge. It's a redevelopment of this old trucking facility that's going to be huge for the folks that live in Pittsburgh and the surrounding areas. They're putting job incubators. It's kind of a job creation site right there. All right, so here's what's important to know about Southside Trail. It is going to be open in the next week or two, if they're on time, or in the next month or two, as an interim hiking trail, right? No concrete. It's just a trail like the one that's north of Monroe by Piedmont Park. It's just a dirt trail. Have you ever walked on that? So it's going to be like that for 4 miles. And it's beautiful. There's tunnels, there's trees, canopy. I mean, it's a really beautiful trail. What's significant about that is when they open it officially, you can just take a guess. I predict a couple 100,000 people will walk on the Southside Trail in the first year that it's open. And most of those people will be walking this 4-mile stretch. Someone will go a mile, someone will go 2 miles, some will go all the way. It's hard to say. My point is you're going to have a lot of new eyeballs seeing these neighborhoods for the first time. And again, potential demand, right? So that's the Southside Trail. The West Side Trail, nothing really new on the West Side Trail. There's a couple of developments that are just slowly getting off the ground. Murphy's Crossing, still haven't heard a word about that. Actually, there is something new. Okay, I'm sorry, back up. Some of you probably remember, if we went on the tour, we went to Lee and White Development, which is where the Monday Night Garage is. Several new businesses have opened in the Lee and White development. This is the development that's literally at the corner of Lee and White, and it's in what's called Warehouse Row. It's all of this right here. So Lee and White, which is owned by Stream Realty, look them up by the way, is all of the stuff on, this is the West Side Trail, right? The West Side Trail is going up this way. Lee and White is this whole piece of property that fronts White Street, there's Lee Street, and it goes all the way up to Lawton Street. So this whole area is Lee and White. It's about 700,000 square feet of old warehouses. So this is grocery store distribution, basically, back in the day. So Stream went in there, gutted it, landed Monday Night Garage as their first tenant. They then had the kombucha tea, they've got ASW Distillery, they've got Honeysuckle Gelato doing production in there. The big news there is about 3 months ago, a restaurant opened there called Boxcar. That's the bomb, okay? It's the first really sort of decent restaurant of scale in Southwest Atlanta. Let me repeat that. This is the first decent restaurant to open south of I-20 and west of I-75. I am not kidding.
Is that the vegan place?
No, the vegan place is the Slutty Vegan.
Okay.
She's killing it. But she's tiny. I mean, have you heard of the Slutty Vegan? It's over in Westview. She's printing money. So the Slutty Vegan, who's about ready to open her second, right? But it's a tiny little place. Like there's a line all the way down the block since she opened. And they say that she makes good sandwiches and good burgers. But other than that, no, I'm being serious. So what's happening is the restaurants finally are starting to arrive in the Southwest Atlanta, and it's because of Lee and White. Okay, The guys that own Boxcar, by the way, are the guys that own Hop City. Hop City, as in Krog Street Market, and the one in Midtown, right? And they've got one in Birmingham. So Craig and his wife, who own Hop City, opened Boxcar, and below it, they opened another Hop City. So they got the whole corner of one of these buildings over here. And ASW Distillery, the one from Armour Drive, has opened a huge tasting room overlooking the Monday Night Garage. So all of a sudden there is what we've been waiting for like, I've been waiting for since I've been going over there for 5 or 6 years, is critical mass, is beginning to arrive, finally. Now there's a lesson in here, you guys. Critical mass is just starting to arrive, and the housing prices have tripled in the last 5 years. They didn't even have any restaurants, and people were buying up the houses. So, you know, that tells you that where this demand is coming from. So it's really hard to say. I think there's going to be, you know, a little bit of a correction here at some point. All right, as we go further north, there's nothing. So the West Side Trail ends at Washington Park on the north end, and that is right here. So the West Side Trail, so right in here, this green line is the Marta Spur line. That's the Proctor Creek line that goes up to Bankhead Highway. There's really nothing new. There is a meeting coming up on this section of the trail right here. You may have heard the Atlanta Beltline purchased a piece about a year ago. They affectionately call it the Kudzu line, and I'll let you guess why they call it that. They're going to be clearing that out, apparently. Now that goes through some pretty rough areas. It's the Bankhead area. It goes over Joseph Boone. It's where the Marta goes under Joseph Boone. It's also where the beginning of Proctor Creek. Did you happen to see the picture of those bird scooters laying down in the creek in the culvert on Facebook? Okay, that's where I'm talking about. That is where Boone crosses Proctor Creek. It's also where the Marta line. All that, I'll show you. That there was a famous picture of some people. I don't know how they got there, but there were 2 or 3 scooters laying down in the water in Proctor Creek. It was not a pretty picture. I'm sure the bird folks did not appreciate that at all, but that's another story. I am going to get to that when it comes to risk. So we're talking about right in here. Here's Proctor Creek right here. The scooters were right here, right there, and the Beltline crosses under Joseph Boone right here. So don't really have anything to report there. The news a little further up the road at Bankhead Station is huge. You probably know of Quarry Yards. I think we stopped. For those, when we did the bus tour, did we stop at Quarry Yards? Yeah. You still can't get into the West Side Park where the quarry is, where the granite quarry is. I think you know that's going to be a 300-acre city park. They're going to fill the quarry with water. That's going to become the reservoir. None of that's open yet. First phase of that opens in 2020. But what is imminent there is the groundbreaking of Quarry Yards, which is the private development owned by the former baseball player Mark Teixeira and his partner Joel Bowman. Okay, that is a massive development that is going to change everything on the west side. Okay, it's literally right next to the, let me zoom in for you here. This is about a 70-acre piece of property, and it is basically everything you see on that screen. Okay, so here's the Bankhead Transit Station. Teixeira and Bowman and those guys own all of this. Basically all of this is 70 acres. These are old industrial buildings, and Proctor Creek runs right through their property, and they just opened about a year ago the first 3 miles of something called the Proctor Creek Greenway, which is a series of trails and parks that'll go from the Bankhead Station all the way out to the Chattahoochee River. It's about 7 miles. So that's being redeveloped. So that's very exciting. There's also, I think there was recently a meeting about the West Side Park. Did anybody go to that by any chance? Yeah, I think it was last week. I don't know what was told, but I knew before that phase 1 is 2020. Okay, so north side, nothing to really talk about. No word of anything. The CSX train still runs all up through here. I'm talking about the part that goes through Collier Hills, Tanyard Creek, and all that. Phase 3, if that ever gets done, it's not going to get done in my lifetime, I know, so I don't care about it. But no, it really, they don't even know how they're going to do it. The last piece that I have some news on is that what they now are officially calling the Northeast Trail, and the Northeast Trail starts at Piedmont Park and Monroe, basically right in here, and runs all the way up to Armory, not quite Armory Yard, but Mason Street, which is where 85 goes over the Beltline and the MARTA station. So they're calling that the Northeast Trail. If you do a search for Beltline Northeast Trail, you will see that they've broken up the project into 3 phases. You may know, for those of you that know the Ansley Park, Piedmont Heights area, Georgia Power went in and moved their towers, their transmission towers, moved them. They had to get into the Beltline corridor to do that. And while they were there, they took all the tracks out. So they cleaned up the corridor for the Beltline. So the Beltline is taking advantage of that. And they are in design right now of that piece of the trail, basically that's going to run from Piedmont Road, it's Westminster Street at Piedmont Road, where the boy next door is, all the way up to Mason Street, which is just past the Buford Highway Connector. So that actually is going to end up getting poured concrete, probably 5 years before it was originally. So other than that, I really don't have anything. I know we're running out of time, but let me just see where we are. Yeah, we're almost there. Let me sum up a couple things here, and if you can stay a little extra time, that would be fine. If not, that's okay. I will send you the links on that. Let me see what I'm almost done with everything. All right, developments. Let me go through this. First of all, transit. The ATL. There is a new transit authority that has rolled up all things transit into one. They are now the governing body. They're making all the decisions. The big news that came out about a week ago is the MARTA sequencing plan. Are you guys up to speed on that? All right, I'll tell you the bottom line here. So you probably know that at the end of 2017, the City of Atlanta residents voted on a T-SPLOST, a sales tax that was approved. And here's an article from today. This is sort of hot off the press. And basically, about a week ago, the board of MARTA approved the sequencing plan. All right, so here's the bottom line. You can go and read this here. But what they're saying is by 2025, these things will be operational. Capitol Avenue is a bus rapid transit, arterial rapid transit, basically nothing substantially new before 2025. If you go further out, planning and design by 2025. They're going to start the planning and the design of the first light rail, high capacity light rail transit system, first new one in Atlanta to come in like 20 plus years. Actually, there hasn't been, well, sorry, let me back up. The only other light rail we have right now is the Atlanta streetcar. MARTA is a heavy rail. MARTA hasn't added a station. I mean, I don't know, when was North Springs open?
10 years.
At least 10 years ago, right? So we haven't seen a new MARTA station, a new transit station. What's important about the MARTA is this. I'll show you a quick map. This is kind of interesting. So, let's see here. Here's the ATL. Okay. So this is, you guys can see this right here. This was from a MARTA presentation on the MARTA. So that's the current rail system right now as it stands, right? This is the current rail system, heavy rail, with the new light rail proposal. This is what was approved a week ago. This is what's going to go forward. Okay. See this yellow, funny, squiggly line? That's Greenbrier Mall down in southwest Atlanta. This is the Campbellton Road, rather, light rail transit. We're talking about streetcar. Same vehicle, tracks. It's going to go right up Campbellton Road, and the whole motivation behind this is really the new mayor and even the previous mayor pushing to give the folks in southwest Atlanta access to the city fast. They feel like they've been neglected, and there's some very depressed areas down here because MARTA didn't go there. So what they're doing is they're giving them light rail, high speed, high capacity mass transit. Now, problem is it's going to be in design by 2025. It's 8 to 12 years to build a new light rail transit system. This is why I said we're not getting any traffic relief anytime soon. But this is important because this is approved, it's going forward. So this is the next big thing for transit in Atlanta. What's going to happen here, This is a MARTA station, obviously, right? That is the Oakland City MARTA station. I think we went down there. I took you down there. That's West End. The Oakland City MARTA station is right next to Murphy's Crossing. If you remember me, I used to get very excited when I talked about Murphy's Crossing. Now I've given up on it. But that's the two MARTA stations here. But what you see right here is this light rail transit system is going to literally merge into the Beltline corridor and follow the West Side Trail up to Washington Park, and then it's going to cut across and come through downtown and merge into the existing streetcar, go through downtown. That's the streetcar right here. They're going to extend. They're going to connect the light rail on both ends of the streetcar. Remember, it's the same technology. So if you've seen that big blue vehicle spinning around downtown, that electric streetcar, this is the same vehicle, same technology. That's what's named the light rail. And then it gets better. Then it's going to come out over here, you know where it ends right now, over at the King Memorial National Park area. They're going to extend it over to Krog Street Market, and that sucker is going to go up the East Side Trail, all the way, ultimately to Lindbergh Station is what they say. But we're talking about a 15-year operational, right? But that's what's happening here. So they want to do something on this side of the Beltline, but there's no funding. They want to do the Clifton Corridor, but there's no funding. All right, so that's the latest on technology here. In terms of developments, I'll go through these real quick. Midtown, I kind of ranked these in what I thought was the scale of things happening. Midtown is in a league of its own. If you can buy a house in Midtown, it'll be like having a house on Madison Avenue in New York City. Anywhere near Midtown. If you can walk to Peachtree Street, like if you live over there off of Glen Iris, all those neighborhoods between Juniper and Monroe, some of the most valuable single-family property. Even on the west side, over there where Home Park is, Ansley Park, going to continue to be one of the most sought-after neighborhoods for the people with money. Now, these are going to be $2 and $3 million homes in 5 to 10 years.
No, they already are.
Some of them already are, but you're not going to be able to touch anything for less than $2 million in these areas. But Midtown, you can still get in for about $1 million. All right. So, and here's why. This is got everything. It's got transit. It's got residential. It's got people living there now. You've got a whole 3-story Whole Foods with a rooftop bar on it now that you can walk to. I'm not kidding. That just opened a couple weeks ago. You've got hotels. You've got green space. You've got walkability. You've got Georgia Tech. All right, and you have scooters. That's part of the risk thing. All right. So West Midtown, if you haven't been over there, West Midtown is not just West Midtown. West Midtown is now the Howell Mill Corridor. That's where all the restaurants are, where the West Egg Cafe and JCT Kitchen and all that. There's something called the Marietta Street Artery, which basically comes out of downtown, up where like Stats is and the George Aquarium, and runs into Howell Mill, or it branches off and goes on to Donnelly Hollowell Parkway, which is my next big thing. And then now you have this thing called the Upper West Side, which is further up Marietta Street, kind of where Collier Hills and runs into it, Chattahoochee and all that. So West Midtown exploding in every direction. But again, getting back to the scale, if you look at what's happening over there, have you heard of this thing? You see that picture?
That thing's in a metro. I live right next to it, and the construction's so loud.
Do you know, look at the size of that. So since you live next door, tell us where that is.
So it's right next to like Barcelona and like those other restaurants right there, and it's massive. Like there's literally like 6 cranes basically all right next to each other. Like there's so many like condos and apartments and just huge office space being built out. It's absolutely insane.
This is an example of what I was talking about the scale that we're going into a new dimension here. We're going to a whole new level in Atlanta. So there is nothing even remotely this high where it is. This is Howell Mill. This is 14th Street, folks. This is literally up next. It's across the street from Cooks and Soldiers and Ormsby. This is massive. And guess what? 2 blocks away is an even larger development called Star Metals. So, look at this. This is what's going in between there and the North Side Cavern. If you know where that is, you know where Upbeat and those places are, the West Egg Cafe. This is directly across the street on Howell Mill. Folks, look at these buildings. Take a look at what's happening here. These are going to come online over the next 24 months. We're talking massive change. This is what I meant by the strategic inflection point. The scale of what's happening now in Atlanta is going to make this city a very, very different city than it is right now. And by the way, you cannot drive down Howell Mill Road now. So imagine what's going to happen when these two buildings go online. So, you just got to prepare people for it. The Memorial Drive corridor, you've seen that, I'm sure. The Howell Mill corridor, I think, is the next sort of sleeper. The problem is the institutional money's already basically bought everything down Howell Mill from Northside Drive, definitely at the Bankhead MARTA station, but even further out. In fact, Teixeira and Bowman own a lot of that property down Donnelly Howell. And that's the old Bankhead Highway between where the West Side Reservoir Park is. That's the Bankhead Highway. Between there and 285, which is another couple miles. Those guys bought land out there 10 years ago.
What about English Avenue? That's how I feel.
English Avenue is one of...
a ghost town.
It is a ghost town. It is an anomaly. Most of those properties, I think, are owned by big hedge funds.
I have a client that bought several over there just because it's like one.
Don't ever sell it. Okay, in my opinion, English Avenue is the most valuable property in the city of Atlanta. And I'll tell you why. You have Donnelly Hollowell Parkway on the south. Well, why don't we talk about that separately? But I agree. Vine City, and if you can get anything in either one of the neighborhoods, go for it. Southside Trail, we're talking. Okay, Final Frontiers. Here's where you guys want to do your homework. You want to go scout around. Go south, go east, and go west. And what you want to do is go to the MARTA stations. Go to Fort McPherson, go to East Point, go to College Park, and just drive, just do donuts. Just go circles further and further out from the MARTA station. Get a feel for, they're already changing profoundly. East Point, College Park, there's some unbelievable stuff happening in those places. You're literally 5 minutes from the airport. You are 10 minutes from downtown. Tons of land. You mark my words, those neighborhoods are going to be huge ROI for you. If you go west, it's really, the West Side Trail I think is too late. I mean, Ashview Heights, Mosley Park, all that, still interesting, but you're going to pay up for it. If you go to the next MARTA station out, which is Westlake, and then the only other one out that way is Holmes, you're going to see some real interesting neighborhoods that are 10 years behind, like maybe what Cabbagetown was like 15 years ago, right? Already though, dumpsters in the front yards, I'm seeing a lot of redevelopment activity. The early adopters are in there, the flippers are in there already. And then if you go out the east side, you want to go past Decatur, there's the Avondale MARTA station, then there's Kensington, and then there is the Indian Creek MARTA station. Just go out that way. If you haven't been down around South Decatur, that whole southeast corner of the city is real interesting. I know there's even activity going on down in the Lakewood area and all the way down to the airport. All right, let me tell you about some risks that I'd sort of be remiss in telling you all this good news and not talking about the risks. Okay, so one of the risks is this term that is used on Wall Street a lot. It's called reversion to the mean. Anybody know what that is? All right, so we know that assets, any kind of asset, real estate, stocks, land, anything, sort of over time has sort of this average price increase. Historically, if you go back, is that a whiteboard?
Yes.
All right, so over time, you got price here and time here, right? Over time, there's sort of this average price increase for stocks, 8 to 10%, for real estate, whatever it is, residential, right? But the reality is the prices don't go up that way every year, right? Sometimes you have these spikes and you have these abnormally high returns for a period. Those are usually followed by abnormally low returns. So what you end up with is this, and right now we're about right here on real estate prices. If you look at the average price increases of real estate in Atlanta, especially in some of these neighborhoods we've been talking about over the last 3 to 5 years, they are abnormally high. They're abnormally meaning to the long range. So reversion to the mean is a statistical concept that basically says we're going to get to that mean. We're going over long term, we're going to get back to that mean. But to get back to that mean, we're gonna have to have some of this. And folks, I don't know when it's coming, but I promise you it is coming. And the problem with bubbles is they never end gently. They don't give you warning. They don't say, it's gonna be a bubble, it's gonna burst, sell your property. By the time you realize it, the buyers are gone. This thing can turn so fast. So I'm not saying anything. I don't know when that's gonna happen. I don't even know when it's gonna happen. It is going to happen at some point. So if I was in your position, I would be thinking about some kind of strategy, some kind of mitigation for that. You know, in the stock market, if you believe the market's in this position, which we do, what you'd be telling investors to do is raise cash. The old saying, cash is king. In other words, get liquid, right? Now, that's not easy to do in real estate for obvious reasons. But if you have liquidity, you are going to be, at some point, you're going to get that once in a lifetime opportunity again. Because you'll be able to buy some of these homes, you know, $100,000, $200,000 lower than they are right now. It's going to happen. I just don't know when. All right. The other thing that I talked about this before, the amount of density, the amount of people that are coming into Atlanta. I jokingly said you hear a lot more horn honking than you used to. I've been in Atlanta a long time. You really do. All right. There is a social tension, social and political tension that is developing in this country. You know it. You can cut it with a knife. Again, I'm not trying to be a doomsday guy here, but at some point, that could get ugly. Now, how bad these things get, I'm just trying to lay out things to think about. It's not, there's going to be some pains, right? You get this many people moving into the city that have to wait that long in traffic. You know, it's like a, what do you call it, a pressure cooker, and I kind of feel that. I'm a little older than some of you. I know some of you guys have been around. I don't know if you agree with me on this, but it feels like there's a lot of tension in this country. I see it on social media, and it's political and all that. So anyway, I'll let you guys go. I hope you found that helpful. I'll send you some links and you can share it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for staying. Lots of information for you. Make a great day, guys.